All right, today we're diving deep into the story of an era that was really defined by one single, remarkable woman, Queen Victoria. We're going to see how her incredible reign became, well, the furnace in which our modern world was forged.
So how does that even happen? How does a teenage girl not only save a totally failing dynasty, but also end up defining an entire century? It's an amazing story of crisis, transformation, and, yeah, a lot of contradiction. And it all starts way before she ever even saw the crown.
Okay, so to really get Victoria, you first have to understand the absolute mess she was born into. I mean, the British monarchy at the time, it was in a state of, well, total decay. It was a real mess.
So you had these Georgian kings, right? Like George III, the one who lost the American colonies and sadly ended his days in madness. They were just seen as totally extravagant and completely out of touch. And while their authority was just crumbling away, you see the real power starting to shift over to the elected parliament.
And believe it or not, it actually gets worse. The royal family had a huge problem, a biological one. See, George III's sons, they became George IV and William IV. They had tons of kids, but not a single one was a legitimate heir. That means the entire royal line, the Hanoverian line, was literally on the brink of just dying out. No one to take the throne.
So in the middle of all this chaos, the hopes of an entire nation rested on one person, just one. A very carefully raised, super disciplined teenager who, by the 1830s, was basically the only real heir left standing, the only one who could inherit the throne.
And just like that, when the moment finally came, the weight of an entire nation fell right onto her very young shoulders. So let's see how she handled it.
She was just 18. Can you imagine? When King William IV died in 1837, the crown passed directly to her. And the people, they were so tired of these old, scandalous kings. They saw her as this symbol of a fresh start, a return to some kind of moral purpose. Talk about pressure, right?
So how did she pull it off? Well, she wasn't entirely alone. She had a guide. Her very first prime minister, Lord Melbourne, he became this incredibly trusted mentor, really a father figure to her. He's the one who taught her the art of statecraft, how to handle the tricky world of politics and diplomacy. He gave her the stability and the confidence she absolutely needed. But Lord Melbourne wasn't the only influential man in her life, not by a long shot. In 1840, she married her cousin, Prince Albert. And that partnership, well, it wouldn't just define her personally. It would radically change the future of Britain itself.
You see, Albert was so much more than just a husband. He became her #1 most trusted advisor. He was this incredible champion for a modern Britain, always pushing for progress in science, in industry, in education, in the arts. He was really the forward-thinking engine behind the throne.
And if you want to see Albert's impact in a nutshell, look no further than his crowning achievement, the Great Exhibition of 1851. It was held in this magnificent, glittering building called the Crystal Palace, and it was all about showcasing Britain's industrial power. It's what really cemented its status as the workshop of the world.
And that industrial boom, it became the engine for this absolutely breathtaking transformation. It didn't just change the economy, it fundamentally reshaped every single part of British society, from its politics all the way to its global reach.
Yeah, this massive economic revolution actually forced political change. You start seeing these crucial laws that expanded democracy. The Reform Acts gave way more men the right to vote, and the Secret Ballot Act helped cut down on corruption. This really solidified Parliament's role as the true power in the country. And it was all part of this long, ongoing debate about who gets a voice in government, a conversation we're definitely still having today.
Now, all of this industrial and economic power, it also fueled massive imperial expansion. In fact, during Victoria's reign, the British Empire reached its absolute peak, and in 1876, she was officially named Empress of India. This expansion was often justified by a belief in cultural superiority, something that was called the white man's burden, this idea that they were bringing civilization to other nations.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Beneath this shiny surface of incredible confidence and progress, the whole era was defined by this deep, fascinating paradox. You had a society that was so sure of its own greatness, but at the same time, it was just plagued by this profound anxiety.
So let's talk about that tension, because it's absolutely crucial. On the one hand, factories were generating unbelievable wealth, but on the other, they were creating just horrific poverty and squalor. You have writers like Charles Dickens using their novels to shine a light on these awful social injustices, the child labor, the dangerous factories, the crushing poverty in the cities. It's a powerful reminder that progress for some people doesn't mean progress for everyone, and that's a dilemma we are definitely still grappling with.
And the challenges weren't just social. Oh no, they were intellectual and even spiritual. In 1859, one single book was published that would send shockwaves through the entire foundation of Victorian belief.
And that book, of course, was Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species. I mean, his theory of evolution was a direct challenge to the biblical story of creation. It created what people called a crisis of faith for so many. It was like a scientific earthquake that just shook religious certainty to its core, opening up all these questions about science, faith, and humanity's place in the universe, questions we are still debating right now.
So, while all these huge national transformations are happening, Victoria's own life was about to be marked by a deep personal tragedy, and this would end up shaping the entire final chapter of her reign and her ultimate legacy.
In 1861, Prince Albert died. It was sudden, and it completely shattered her. Victoria plunged into this deep, deep mourning that, honestly, she never fully recovered from. She basically disappeared from public life for years. It was only much later in her reign that she re-emerged and was celebrated with these huge golden and diamond jubilees. That's what really restored her as this beloved national icon before she finally passed away in 1901.
So when we look back at it all, her legacy is just a masterclass in contradictions, isn't it? Just like the era that's named after her. You've got this immense progress built right alongside profound inequality. You have a massive global empire being overseen by a queen who is just consumed by her own personal grief. And you have this unshakable public confidence that's constantly being haunted by this private creeping doubt.
And in a way, her own transformation really mirrored the transformation of her nation. She started out as this uncertain young girl handed a broken crown, and she became this solid, revered matriarch. Her kids and grandkids ended up on thrones all across the continent, which is how she got the famous title, the Grandmother of Europe.
So in the end, the Victorian era, it wasn't simple. It wasn't easy. It really was a furnace, a time of intense heat, incredible pressure, and constant conflict. And it was right there, inside that furnace, with all of its brilliant and, yes, its terrible contradictions, that the very foundations of our own world were forged.
Which leaves us with one last thing to think about. We are, without a doubt, living in the world the Victorians made. But the question is it a world that's built on the foundation of steady, inevitable progress, or is it a world that will be forever defined by the very same paradoxes that they themselves could never quite resolve?